On today's Human Biography podcast, I have the honor of speaking with Dr. Philip Steenkamp, the President and Vice-Chancellor of Royal Roads University, a place that holds a lot of importance to me because I graduated from there with my master's in professional communications, 2013. Dr. Steenkamp is a leader who he's worked across the government, education, public service, and I've been looking forward to this conversation because it just goes beyond titles. I want to talk about how leadership is lived, how education is evolving, and what is the future for what we're building for future generations. So, Dr. Steenkamp, thank you for being here. Yeah.
Thank you so much, and thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, wonderful. On Human Biography, on our podcasts, we talk about human stories, and I want to go back to when I first had my first residency at Royal Roads. It was in 2011, and it was my first time actually living away from home and going onto a campus, first of all. And when I did get to that campus, I walked around and it was so incredibly beautiful. It was nature-esque. There was a castle, and I remember feeling like, oh, I've stepped into education. I could feel it. Can you tell me the first time you stepped onto that campus and what it felt like for you?
Well, I started as president about 6 years ago,
Yeah.
but I'd been on the campus prior to that.
Yeah.
But I'll talk about when I started as president. I think you might know I actually ride my bike to work every day.
Wow.
And
Okay.
so you come along the trail, and then you enter the campus and you come down that very steep hill down to the castle. You
Yeah.
see the Olympic Mountains ahead of you normally, unless it's cloudy,
Yeah.
and just that breathtaking forest. And I can tell you that every day it's a remarkable experience for me. It doesn't get old. It doesn't get tired. And I just think how lucky I am to be able to, work at a place like this.
Yeah.
It's
I
extraordinary. Yeah.
when I think about, I remember that school holds a lot of serendipity for me. I remember it was August 17th, 2011. Um, Actually, yeah, it was August 17th, 2011, when I first got a call from Joshua Gouliar, who is the head of the program, who's no longer with us now. But he had called me, and it's my brother's birthday that day, August 17th. That same morning, my wife came to me early in the morning and she says, "Hey, we're having a baby." And I was like, "Oh my goodness, this is like one of
Wow.
the best days of my life." And 3 hours later, Joshua Gouliar called me to ask me if that I'd been accepted to this program. And I was like, what are the chances? And I tell you, the day that I graduated in 2013, when I got my acceptance of my thesis, my son started walking. So I don't know how the world works, but there's a lot of serendipity, which we'll talk more about. But I want to talk about your career. So you've had a remarkable career across government, the Olympics, higher education. What drew you to Royal Roads when you first started? Yeah.
Well, I'd always had an eye on this university. I was Deputy Minister of Advanced Education here in
Right.
BC twice, actually, at two different times, between different Deputy Minister portfolios.
Yeah.
And so you have oversight of the whole post-secondary system. And I did that here in BC, but also in Ontario. And I
Okay.
can tell you, this place always interested me because it was different. I mean, it has its own piece of legislation. It's a special purpose university. It has a unique governance model. It is unicameral, which gives you extraordinary kind of flexibility here as well. And it has an applied and professional mandate. So, it's a university that can move very quickly, that can be very responsive, very nimble. But the more I got to know about it, understand, or not fully understand, but appreciate the culture of the place.
Yeah.
I just thought this would be an amazing place to work. And when the opportunity came up, I was actually at UBC, which is a
Yeah.
fantastic university, but
Absolutely.
it's a large traditional research university.
That's
And
right.
the opportunity came up here, and I jumped at it because I thought, wow, you can move quickly in a place like this, and that really appeals to me.
When I think about opportunities of growth, I think back to my own career and sort of think about how I would want to step into leadership. And I wanted to talk to you about, do you remember in your career, what was your first leadership moment and opportunity when you realized you were able to give direction and take lead? Do you remember those moments in your life, in your career?
I would say, I mean, there were a few, but the one that really stands out for me, I was appointed Deputy Minister of Aboriginal Affairs in
Wow.
1997.
Wow.
And I was, what, 35 at the time, which was
Wow.
young for a deputy minister.
Sure. Yeah.
I hadn't had the traditional training,
Yeah.
but a variety of circumstances led to that opportunity. And it was a time of kind of crisis in treaty negotiations. At that time, it was very highly polarized in the province. There was lots of criticism about the way the government of the day was conducting
Yeah.
negotiations with Indigenous communities. And I was kind of thrust into this role. And that for me was a real kind of moment where I realized I'm the leader. Like
Yeah.
people are going to be looking to me for direction on
That's right.
on all of this.
Yeah.
And it was an extraordinary moment in the sense I thought, I haven't come up through the traditional ranks. I haven't really had the apprenticeship in all the areas one would typically require to be an effective deputy minister. So I'm going to have to figure out really quickly about how I assemble a high performing team and
Wow.
and rely on people to be successful. At the same time, of course, you know, providing the leadership that people were looking for, particularly at a highly charged time when these issues were very much contested.
In this day and age, wow, leadership is looking like a lot of different things in this world right now. Um, what would you say good leadership looks like right now at this in this moment? Yeah.
Yeah, it changes, right? And I think
Yeah.
that's the important thing. I think it really is about adaptability, because the leadership style you need to employ during a crisis like COVID is different from a leadership style you might use and deploy at other times. And I think we are in a rapidly changing environment. I know we're in a rapidly changing environment now. There's incredible polarization. There's momentous change in front of us. So it does require a different kind of leadership. And I think adaptability is for me top of mind right now.
Yeah.
You need to be highly, highly adaptable, especially when you're at a small special purpose institution or organization like
Yeah.
Royal Roads. If we don't adapt, we will not survive, and we will certainly not thrive. So you constantly need to be adapting. And for a place like this, you need to figure out where things are going, and you need to try and get there ahead of others in order to succeed. So adaptability is absolutely key. Curiosity too, absolutely essential right now. I mean, go out there and find out, what's going on in different spaces like AI and other things. Um, and then the other characteristic I would talk about is interconnectedness as well.
Yeah.
It's really, really a time to partner, to find partners. Alone, I don't think we will be very successful, but together we will.
I recently attended TED, and at TED we were talking about well, I mean, amongst all the things, technology and the forward movement of that in AI,
Right.
robotics, spatial glasses, AR, VR, all that great stuff. Um, Over the evolving, like say the next 5 to 10 years, especially with AI, climate, and social shifts in play, how is the university evolving with programming? Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. Um, we struck a program optimization committee probably about 6 months ago. It's just reported out, and we're actually having a big community forum next week to sort of go through it. But it asks some fundamental questions. You know, what does our current suite of programs look like? Which ones are no longer as relevant? Where are we seeing declines in demand? Which ones should we discontinue? Which ones should we expand? And most critically, where are the gaps?
Yeah.
So where are the gaps right now? In areas like tech and like healthcare, there clearly are huge demands out there,
Yeah.
and not enough programs in place to kind of meet that demand. But what you come to realize quickly is it's an ongoing and it's an iterative process right now. And you also need to experiment because, I have not seen any effective labor market analysis that looks out to the future with any kind of accuracy. Um, and I think it's a bit of a fool's game to try and predict exactly sort of what the jobs of the future are going to look like. So you really
Right.
have to think about what skill sets are needed in the current climate and what will be needed in the future, and build programming around that,
I
or make sure that those skills are embedded in any programs you introduce. So that has been part of the exercise that we are going through. But there's a big cultural shift here, and that is, what I'm trying to impress upon people is you can't do this and then think you're going to reach some new plateau. You don't. This
yeah,
is ongoing. So
absolutely.
we've moved, for instance, from a 5-year business plan to a 3-year rolling action plan. So the plan is constantly rolling. So each year, a year drops off and we add another year on, and we just keep adjusting. So strategic planning is an ongoing exercise. Traditionally, universities would do a strategic plan that would last 5 or 10 years. Then there'd be a new president that'd do a new plan. And that's a really static kind of way of thinking about things. So in terms of programming, it's a constant exercise, but we've just gone through a kind of major consideration of where we need to position in the market right now.
And I think I find that super refreshing. My career has been a total experiment.
Mm.
And nor when people ask me what my goals are, I'm glad that I graduated. I can say this to you now, but I don't make big goals. I'm constantly experimenting and seeing what's going on with the focus of my work. In fact, the year that I graduated, 2013, I thought maybe I would go get a job after. I've got a master's now. I should just go apply
Mm.
for a job. And what I did was I doubled down into my talents. And I'm glad that I did because the following year I was able to document the Dalai Lama. And then the following year I was able to do more. And then I went on in my career sort of expanding into some incredible spaces. But it only happened because of the confidence that it was built at Royal Roads. And
Right.
it was a different type of experience. And I wanted to ask you, as the president, do you personally stay connected to the student experience, talking to other students and whatnot? Yeah,
Yeah, well, we've just had our alumni weekend this last weekend, so it was a
I missed it. Oh,
fantastic opportunity to reconnect with alum. And I did say to them, actually, we had some TEDx talks, and we had Dan Riskin was our kind of keynote, and we had our first annual alumni achievement awards as well. I did say to them, it gives you incredible energy to be in those environments. Because when you're running an organization like this, there's a tendency to get trapped in your office and just deal with the problems that flow in.
great.
Because if issues can't be resolved, they'll eventually end up on my desk, right? So that means a lot of the problems are
Wow.
complex and challenging. And you need to remind yourself of why you're there. And when
Yeah.
you meet with alumni, and to your question, when you meet with students, that's a really, really powerful reminder. So I like to connect with incoming classes of students, and I do that on a regular basis. I
Yeah.
would go to orientations or cohorts that have just begun, or some cohorts which will be here on residencies, and kind of meet with them. And that gives me a lot of energy. And our vision, as you know, is inspiring people with the courage to transform the world. And you actually see it. And when you
Yes.
talk to alum, you actually hear about it, that these are people who are transforming the world. And the world here can be
Yeah.
defined in many different ways. It's your world, right?
Yeah.
Um, and they are engaged. So many of them are engaged in these kind of these transformative journeys. Our logo for a long time has been life changing,
Yeah.
and this wasn't something dreamt up by a marketing team or in a focus group. This came from students. That
Wow.
the experience here was life changing. We heard
Yeah.
that language. Being close to the student experience is really important. Another example would be the annual intercultural workshop we hold with international students, and we've
Yeah.
had students from about 160 countries that attend
Wow.
Royal
Incredible.
Roads. And those events, which are largely cultural, a lot of dance, a lot of food, a lot of music, are just so incredibly stimulating and gives everybody such a wonderful energy and such a sense of why we do this work.
Oh, I have to just compliment the school because it gave me the confidence to build human biography. I have been able to document some of the most interesting people on the planet, and yet still live and breathe in British Columbia, which is great. So I travel for my work, but then I get a chance to actually see fellow alumni that I've gone to school with, and we talk about Royal Roads. And then there's people that I meet that I ask them or I mention where I went to school, and they're like, "Oh, did you know I went to Royal Roads as well?" So the community just gets bigger and bigger, and
Right.
you can tell the personality of the person of what they're doing or what they're taking on and their approach to things. And so I always have this conversation with, I should say now, I mean, younger people, but I mean, I kind of put myself in this place of younger people, but people who are just entering in post-secondary is to talk about, is education, should we still, should we take on higher education? And I remember when I was younger, I questioned it a bit because I found it very hard and daunting. But when I got to Royal Roads, they had a program for me. Like it was
Yeah.
a program that I could fit into rather than something that, you had to sort of figure out, and maybe sort of part of you was in it, part of you wasn't. So I have to say that when people talk about higher education, should I do it? Should I not? Like, what do you say to those people? Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, you alluded to something here. There is a sense out there among some folks that the sort of return on investment in post-secondary is not what it was, right? And
Yes.
that may or may not be true in certain areas. And there's been a decline of trust in institutions generally, including universities and colleges, which I think is really challenging because you talk about your own experience, but the alumni I met this weekend all talked about the transformative impact a place like this had on
Right.
them.
That's right.
So I would say to people considering it, find the right place and
Yeah.
find the right fit.
Yeah.
And you mentioned your experience at Royal Roads, and what I find so compelling about the Royal Roads model is, um, it is applied. So
Yeah.
you are involved constantly in dealing with challenges, dealing with problems, and problem solving, dealing with things that are real and are tangible. And
Right.
that's how the learning occurs, right? And in small cohorts, much smaller than you might see at a bigger university, and with people from many different walks of life, many different professions in some instances with our students who are mid-career. Um, and so generally my message would be, do your research, figure out the right place, the right fit. Don't be fooled necessarily by some of the more traditional metrics around things like rankings or all of that kind of thing. You really have to figure out what place will work for you. And
Right.
if you are interested in the kind of thing we offer here, I think we can offer an unparalleled experience.
It was, yeah. I mean, I recently came back for dinner when I had nominated Dr. Von Mendel for his
Mm,
honorary doctorate, and I got to come and sit. I didn't get a chance to connect with you that night, but I remember feeling so welcomed into that castle again, and just having that warm, like I think the last time I was there was my graduation time. We had a
right.
dinner there, and I sat there and I said, it feels good to be a part of such a great institution. I do know that, when people talk about, and it's great that, some people don't have opportunity to go to school or post-secondary, but if you can, I will say that you feel part of something bigger than what you are.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then the relationships that I've made just by saying that I went to Royal Roads, they're like, "Oh, my door's open for you. I went there too." And we talk about our experience there. And then we say, "Hey, what can we create together?" Which is really, really refreshing to me because I was creating while I was there on campus. I was allowed to be creative, and I was allowed to do a documentary as a part of my thesis, which was kind of amazing. And somebody has now recently to asked me to do my doctorate there too. And so I was like, "Oh, okay." So I've been talking to my thesis supervisor Jagris about that, and she was like, "Oh, you should come back and do your doctorate." I was like, "I'll think about it," but I think just having people who believe in you is a big deal.
Yeah.
And so, what kind of graduates do you think the world needs right now? What is the world looking for? Yeah.
Yeah, it's a big question.
Yeah.
But it goes back to some of what we've discussed previously. I do think it's people who prepared to kind of lean in right now,
Yeah.
because there is this sense out there that the world's going to hell in a handbasket,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
people feel overwhelmed. We know about climate fatigue, and now we
Yeah.
have this huge issue with our neighbor to the south, of course, which is just turning our worlds upside down.
Interesting.
Um, yeah. So we really need people who are prepared to go in there and lean in and understand that, um, we need to demonstrate that we are hopeful about our future, but
Yeah.
that, hope without action is delusion, right?
That's
You have
right.
to get out there and you have to act. You need to be hopeful, but you need to act to actually make that hope mean something.
Yeah.
So it's people who are prepared to take action. And I think what the world needs are leaders in different spaces, right? I mean, obviously, we need people with technical expertise and all of that, but you need people who can demonstrate good judgment, right? Because it's a complex environment, and you often need to make judgment calls very quickly around
Yeah.
things. You need people who can be especially creative right now, because the problems are really complex and challenging. And the old ways of doing business are no longer helpful or necessarily helpful. And for me as well, you need people who can actually deliver results.
Yeah.
There's
That's
so
right.
much skepticism out there right now
Yeah.
about governments, about institutions generally. So deliver, right, as well. And those three things, sort of judgment, creativity, and ability to actually deliver. Uh, if I'm a hiring manager, that's what I would be looking for right now, right?
When you a lot of the work that I do revolves around legacy. That was one of my thesis. That was part of my thesis when I was there at Royal Roads, is looking at and not legacy. You're gonna go away, but your living legacy. And what would you like people to know about your living legacy and what you do? Yeah,
Yeah, that's always a really hard question.
I can imagine. I
Um,
can imagine. I was trying to keep it light. I was trying to keep it
yeah,
light.
I would just say that I supported a culture here, a culture that will enable this institution to survive and thrive for generations of students, the generations of students ahead, right?
Yeah,
Because it's by no means a foregone conclusion. You see the challenges that colleges and universities are facing worldwide, but in North America, I mean, every day you hear about a place shutting down, or every week at least you
yeah,
hear about a place shutting down.
right.
And I think there's just so much to offer at a place like Royal Roads. I do honestly believe it's on the sort of cutting edge of post-secondary education and is the university of the future.
Yeah,
So for a legacy, I'd like to know that we had a culture here that had not become complacent,
yeah.
had not become static, and that understood, in order to survive and thrive and serve students and give them the skills they need to survive and thrive in a rapidly changing world, we need to constantly be moving and constantly be figuring out where things are going, and meet people there, right? We
Yeah.
need to be on those frontiers all the time.
It's beautiful.
And there's a great foundation here, but there is inertia which can develop,
That's right.
in any organization.
What advice would you give someone stepping into their first leadership role?
What advice?
Yeah.
Um, Listen and learn, honestly,
True. Yeah.
because you need to do that. You need to take the time right up front to understand the organization, but particularly to understand the culture. Even if you understand the structures and the processes well, if you don't understand the culture, you will not be effective in your role. So listen and learn, and actively listen. That is key. And then I think you are well equipped then to proceed. I mean, I'll give you one small example. When Before I started here, and I'd done a lot of research on the university, and I'd known it previously in my previous role in government. I
Yeah.
actually wrote up uh, I wrote up the new vision for the university
Wow.
myself before I started. And then I put it in a drawer and I did
Wow.
not take it out for 6 months because that was my listening exercise, right?
Beautiful. Yeah.
Listening and learning. And then I took it out and said, okay. And interestingly enough, there was a lot of alignment, but there were some critical areas where I needed to make changes and tweak, right? So don't
Yes.
come in thinking you understand everything about the place and you've got the vision for it. You need to talk to people.
Everything is constantly
Yeah.
evolving.
Yeah.
I think what I've learned about myself is that when I'm completely engaged with some an organization or something that I'm taking on, I know that I'm really interested in it when I ask them after, how can I help? Like I want to come back and help. And
Right.
this was a part of that exercise for me, is that to use
Yeah.
my voice, my talents,
Yeah.
my media skills to, and I contacted the university a few times, like, what can I do? So I was an assistant. I did a little bit of professor work there. I taught some online courses. I did a guest lecture. I might come back and do my doctorate there, but really it's about promoting the school because it did so
Mm.
much for me. And
Yeah.
so, Dr. Steenkamp, I want to thank you for this generous and thoughtful conversation. As alumni, I feel very proud of what Royal Roads is becoming under your leadership, and I know others do too. And thank you for your work that you're doing and showing up as a real human. We're real humans. We're not robots yet. In a role that often feels untouchable, but it's always really comforting when we get to have these conversations. And that so there is a touch point. So it's been a pleasure and an honor, and I thank you. And I'm coming to you to say I'm here to serve with you and for you anytime using my talents. It has been the biggest grace to have an education. It's been the biggest privilege to have an education. And if I don't take opportunity to let people such as yourselves know that I'm available to you to help, then I would be at a loss. So I thank you for this opportunity as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I really want to thank you. And I think you've just demonstrated that alumni are indeed our best ambassadors. So
Yeah.
thank you for the opportunity and thank you for reaching out.